Hey guys, welcome to AAP Government in the Time of Corona. So this is probably the first of three videos over the presidential nomination and election process. Probably have one video on primaries and two videos on the Electoral College, one on the way it works and another one on the implications of how it's organized for elections in the United States. Let's get started. The first thing I want to do is remind you that this primary process occurs at any level, not just the presidential level. Presidential one, of course, gets all the attention, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only time primaries happen. Primaries, of course, occur any time in which there's more than one person running for the same office within the same party. So if there's two Democrats running for Secretary of State in Montana, they'll have to have a primary to find out which Democrat gets to run. But those are pretty simple affairs. You basically have runoff elections, one person against another. Whoever gets the most becomes the nominee for that position. Or other states do it slightly differently, but for the most part, those are fairly simple affairs. The presidential one gets all the attention, of course, and it's a little more complicated because not only is it within each state, but there's 50 states plus, of course, territories and things like that. So the first thing we have to understand about the primary process is that when we're talking about the president, is that we're all looking to gather delegates. Basically, imagine every state is going to get so many delegates, and then at the end of the day, end of the summer, we're all going to get together at the party convention, and whoever can say they have the most delegates in their favor becomes the nominee. Where do all these delegates come from? Well, as you can see, this is the Republican delegate chart for 2012, and you can tell that every state the Republicans gave every state 10 delegates just for being a state, and then you can see that basically there's another number of delegates that are given based on population, and then there's some delegates that are awarded based on their loyalty. So if you look at Texas voted for the president, the Republican, to be president in 2012. So the Republican Party is going to give them 28 points, 28 delegates. They have a Republican governor. They have Republican senators, those kinds of things. And so Texas gets a bonus 34 delegates for being basically good Republicans. You take the population, you take the automatic, and you put together with the bonus for loyalty, and therefore, Texas gets 155 delegates. In this way, the parties try to weight the most important states, both in terms of population, where the most votes are to be had, but they also are trying to make sure that the states that do the most for the party are rewarded. So California votes pretty across the board Democratic, so they don't get any bonuses. But at the same time, we have 159 delegates in California. 169 because of just the fact that they're a big state with a lot of people. Add a couple party leader delegates, and then you get 172. You can see down here that Montana, Montana's got, we voted for the Republican in 2012, so we got this nice 7 points for the Republican loyalty. We had in 2012, we have one Republican representative. We have, one chamber of our House. And so we got an extra 10 delegates. But Montana is a small state, and so we only have a total of 27. Now, the Republicans have got a different number of delegates than the Democrats. Remember, nothing about political parties is in the Constitution, so they can have as many delegates as they want or as few delegates as they want. They can divide them up however they want. There's no laws that say they have to do it one way or another. So it's kind of up to them. And this is the Republican one. The Democratic one is different, of course. By the way, a little point of, kind of trivia. The Republicans have about 2,000, ish delegates available. Democrats have about 5,000-ish delegates available. I could look it up and find out the number, but it's really not that important. It's an internal party thing. But they are a different number is all I wanted you to know, so that when you see the number of delegates in a given election, that that, you're not trying to match the numbers. So the point is, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to decide how many delegates each state is going to give to how many which candidate, and then those delegates are going to travel to the convention at the end of the summer, and they're going to pledge their support at the convention. So basically, the primary process occurs at each state, and each state is trying to decide how many delegates for the Republican, how many delegates for the Democrat are going to be awarded for each candidate. And then those delegates are going to add up until somebody has a majority. So you can see here in the 2012 Republican caucus, we'll get into what caucuses are in just a little bit, but into the 2012 caucus, you can see that in this case, Mitt Romney got 38-ish% of the vote, Rand Paul 24.8%, so forth and so on. And so when it comes time for Washington to give up its delegates, I was hoping Washington would be on this list, but it's not big enough. When Washington gets its delegates, if it has, say, 50 delegates to give, then 37.6 of them are going to be awarded to Mitt Romney, and the remainder according to these percentages. These percentages are discovered in either a primary or a caucus system. We'll talk about the difference between the two in a second. The problem is that, some states are more important than others, and we get that, and so every state wants to be important. And there's a couple different ways you can be important. The first way is to basically be a big state like California. California, Texas, New York, Illinois, Florida, these are big, big states. And of course the parties listen very closely to what they want. The other way is to be first. First is important because it's kind of like that first game of the season. We can all talk about who's going to be the good teams, who's going to be the bad teams. But when you have that first game, it's the first proof. It's the first thing, real chance to see how people are going to do. And so if you're first, you kind of get to set the tone. And so you get some small states like Iowa and New Hampshire who really are trying to be more important than perhaps their population suggests they should be. And they're trying to do that by being first and setting the tone. That, of course, means that there's a little bit of a race to be first, or at least near the beginning. Your book talks about front loading, where everybody tries to be near the beginning of the primary season. Nobody wants to be near the end because, of course, it might be over by the time they get to you. And so, that would be the opposite of being important. And so, being first or being close to first is something that the parties have tried to do. And this leads to a weird phenomenon where everybody's sort of like racing this front loading to be first or near the beginning, or there's two other strategies to trying to be relevant. So the first strategy would be big, have a lot of people. The second strategy would be to be first. The third strategy, well, what if we all just gather together? We all vote at the same time, and while by myself I may not be a big deal, but hey, there's 20 other states doing it all at the same time, and so together we're going to make this big chunk of delegate decision. And that has led to a phenomenon called Super Tuesday, in which many, many states have their delegates, have their primaries all at the same time. And you can see here on this little map here that in 2008, so many states all tried to have it at some point in February. And so everybody's sort of racing to the front trying to do this. Now you'll notice that Montana is this kind of greenish color, which means June, which means we're just about last. That's the fourth strategy for being, irrelevant. Montana, we recognize, okay, we're a small state, number one, so no one really pays attention to us. Number two, we're not first, and so we can't play that game. Number three, we'd probably be lost in a gigantic primary involving a bunch of other states. And so how about this? We'll go last. And we may not be important most of the time because the race has already been decided. For example, right now, today it's April 20th, and basically we know that Joe Biden is the nominee for the Democrats, and we haven't even had our primary. We won't have it until June. So most of the time it's not going to work out for us. We're not going to be important. But man, when we are, we're really important. And that's because we're the last state to go, or one of them. And therefore, we're the last set of delegates to be awarded. And if the race is very, very close, like it was in the 2016 Republican nomination, then, people pay attention to us. It's like, hey, Montana's got 25 delegates to give. And 25 may not sound like a lot, but when it's tied, 25 makes the difference. And so Montana's strategy basically is to go last. And basically that means that we're not important until we are. And then we're very important. So the delegates are awarded in the primary and caucus process. And there's basically three types of this process that I need you to know from your textbook. Open primaries, closed primaries, and caucuses. And basically, let's just put it this way. A primary is an election. A caucus is a meeting. And so at the primaries, in the states that have primaries, we have elections. And it's at these elections that people are going to cast their ballots and we're going to decide who the delegates get to go for. The difference between an open and a closed primary is who gets to vote for whom. In an open primary, basically, there's different versions of it, but basically you can vote for whoever you want. You may have to declare, okay, I want a Democratic ballot, so I can only vote for a Democrat. But, I could have asked for a Republican ballot, so it was my choice. And that's the kind of a primary that Montana has. So when you go to vote, you're going to show up to the primary station, and they're going to ask, do you want a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot? And it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, or neither. You get to pick one, and then you get to vote for somebody on that ballot. That would be an open primary. Now, some people think that this is not fair, because what if a Republican decides that, you know what, I think the best way to get my guy elected is to make their guy the worst possible guy that could be picked. And so I'm going to vote for a bad Democratic candidate. And in that way, maybe I can, destroy the good candidate's chances of getting the nomination. This kind of thing is called crossover voting or rating. And basically, it's just what I described. A Republican or a Democrat votes for the other guy, hoping to destroy the best candidate's chances of winning in the primary and maybe make the road easier for their guy. Well, that doesn't seem good. Why should you let a Democrat vote for a Republican or vice versa? If you really wanted to vote for the Republican, then join the Republican Party, right? That's at least what some people say. And in that case, we have ourselves closed primaries. Now, in a closed primary, only the people who are members of that party can vote for members of that party. So only Republicans can vote for Republicans, Democrats can vote for Democrats. And that kind of leaves out a lot of people in the middle, like myself, who are like, well, wait a second, that's not very fair. This guy's going to be my leader too, so why can't I vote for him? Of course, the answer would be from the Democrats and Republicans, well, if you think so strongly about this, then join one of the parties. But I don't want to join one of the parties. I want to be, independent. And so then I'm just kind of left out of the closed primary states. Now, this means that electoral primary politics can get kind of ugly, because basically in closed primary states, what you're seeing is that only Republicans can vote for Republicans, and that means that only the most dedicated political people, the most dedicated Democrats, the most dedicated Republicans will vote in the primary election, because they're the ones who actually joined the party, and they're the ones who actually decided to go out on a Tuesday in the middle of June to vote in the Montana primary. And what that means is that those people are going to vote differently than people who are, independent. And that means that they're probably going to choose candidates that are, the most Republican because they're the most Republican, most Democrat because they're the most Democrat. And that leads to possibly choosing primary candidates who then go on to the general election, remember, who are among the most not radical, that's probably the wrong word, committed Democrats, committed Republicans. And that may be more than what people like me that are independent might want. We'll talk more about the primary system, and we'll talk about the electoral college next time. Have a good one.